It's almost like, and I recognise this might be a bit of a hot take, Wales are good. Weird thing to say about a team that are about to play for a Grand Slam, I know, but I think there were points in that opening half hour against Italy where Wales looked like there might be more to them than just pure luck and having to loop a Faletau. After an odd Six Nations, Wales finally decided to rely more on talent, skill and Italian indiscretions than jam to beat the Azzurri out in Rome as they look to keep the pot of preserve still stocked up ahead of a Grand Slam matchup in Paris next weekend. So, with Wales securing a third 4-try bonus point in as many games, meaning it's possible for them to next week break the record points tally on a 5 or 6 nations table ever and go top of an all-time table of champions, making them the most dominant team in the competition's 130-year history. How did Wales cheekily sneak past another team who clearly deserved it more? Last week, I suggested Italy's biggest weakness is their inability to recover from a mistake. Each game this tournament, Italy have had a good spell before a stupid error caused them to retreat into their conchiles, structure and shape wilting like spaghetti in a kettle. But on Saturday, Italy decided to try and get their crucial error right out of the way right at the start, and I mean right at the start. Paolo Garbisi is targeting Gareth Davis from the kick-off, which is not a terrible idea. Trapping the 9 at the bottom of the ruck would really strain Wales' exit, but Garbisi doesn't anticipate Saturday being Davis's turn with the family brain cell. As the 9 tries to anticipate Garbisi's body language, jogging round to where the ball suggests he might be kicking. Oh, no, okay. The ball bounces, Wales let it bounce again, and then they kindly take the scrum back on halfway. And so begins a well-marshalled and varied Wales attack, mixed in with some typically 2021 shithouse spirit. If Hardy's quick tap last week was to catch England napping, this is to exploit Italy sleepwalking. Davis isn't looking to score, he's looking to just jam his way to get an extra man once again. There's no gap, he runs right into Brex and BG, hoping one of them will tackle him on instinct much as anything and give away a yellow card. BG obliges. This is a law Wayne Barnes has always throughout his entire career been really hot on, and Wales will have known that going into the game. And then they double down on the small scale shithousery. At the first scrum, after a proper hooker is sin-binned, the coach had no choice but to nominate a player from elsewhere in the 15 to sit on the sideline for the remainder of the 10 minutes so they can bring on a replacement in the carded player's position to complete the scrum. BG was also binned against Ireland, and Franco Smith chose to bring off winger Monte Ioane rather than the customary back rower. So, this in mind, from the penalty, Wales call for the scrum, not because they want it, but because they know Smith will do the same again, and it'll leave Lewis Rees-Zammit completely unmarked for 10 whole minutes. Except Wales actually do kind of use the scrum well and strike right away. Watched in real time, this looks like a really lovely, ornate, intricate move, but here's a map of what the ball actually does in that time. It's unbelievably simple, but a tribute to the power of blocking and dummy runners. Italy dumped fullback Jacopo Trulli on the blind side, so Rees-Zammit doesn't have a total walk-in, meaning Wales' extra man is on the open side here. But this gives the Italian backs, who are there, more space to drift and cover multiple men in attack. In order to exploit the overlap, this is what Wales have to do. They have to prevent the Italians drifting. But if there's anything Wales have got good at the Six Nations, it's making the most of an extra man. And they achieve this through another thing they've become really well known for, the Six Nations, getting an assist from a referee. Gareth Davis picks up and grabs across a second whilst the other backs begin their runs. Normally, Varney is able to hit him about here, but Wayne Barnes is in the way. If Barnes isn't, it forces Davis to give the pass now, and Carlo Canna knows the ball is going to bigger right away and can ignore Davis ×2 to mark up 1-on-1. But thanks to Wayne the Whistle, the Newcastle Emily Amoeba can pass that half second later, meaning Canna has to try and mark both Bigger and Davis' namesake Jonathan. He plants his feet to try and stop the Fox, and this kills the drift. Brex has to come in to try and cover Bigger, and it leaves Bellini in an impossible position, 20 metres of width and 2 major threats in North and Adams. And so, the world's most technically excellent winger can just do what he does there. Yeah, I know, let's forget about that one. It's such a weird exception because it's kind of... He makes technically the correct decision in terms of how you'd be coached and how the perfect way to kind of finish it and protect the ball, but it's an anomaly of anatomy that wrecks it. It's incredibly terrible by Josh Adams, but he's also kind of doing the right thing, so it's an odd one. Let's just move on. This move is deliberately designed to use the referee as a blocker, an increasing trend in top-flight rugby. Anyone who can get through a game of Super Rugby without Sanzar copyright striking the images burned onto your retinas might notice the Crusaders are superb at targeting the space immediately around the referee, but I can't show you any examples of that, so instead I hope you're enjoying this friendly dog. You can't lay any of the blame on Barnes or suggest this is unfair. It's just using your surroundings to open up the space. Perhaps the flavouring was subtler this week, but don't doubt it. This was another Wales win coated in jam. But man, did it taste so sweet. Ken Owens was stopped one try short of the most iconic hat-trick in rugby since Jonah Lomu shook some mud off his shoes in 1995, both from smart work by the other Welsh forwards. Rather than raw power, the first try is about sneak and technique. As the two packs engage, Wales manoeuvred their bodies so as many of the Italians as possible are latched onto either Justin Tipuric or Corey Hill. And so, as Wales begin to rotate them more, Hill can withdraw, taking 3 Italians with him, and Tipuric can pull his pair to the ground. On the other side, Wyn Jones continues to drive straight as Wales rotate, meaning 2 Italians keep driving solely at him, and bam, damage is done. 3 Welsh forwards between them have taken out all 8 Italians, leaving the other 5 teammates to just propel Owens over the line. The second is similar but simpler. 7 Welsh bodies engaging 8 Italians, hiding Owens and allowing him to peel off, refinding his footing, and then finishing really quite nicely. It's, again, Jonah Lomu here. It's basically second coming of Jonah Lomu here. Wales were accurate in pretty much all areas, as alert to chances dropped into their laps, as willing to create their own through fast and organised rugby. Yet it's hard to deny there were quite a few scores that were simply far too easy. Faletau's try begins with Josh Adams doing some being world class that takes him to oh so close to the line, and only Garbisi competes, meaning Wales have an easy clear out and can set their forwards into shape right away. Then Italy's enormous, flashing, frustrating weak spot appears once again. If you get up to their line, all you need to do to send Italy's defence scrambling is scan the line and send a carrier into the furthest out forward 2, maybe 3 times. This forces the other Italian forward to wrap around the ruck, but they have no sense of organisation in how they do it, creating absolute chaos in Italian ranks. This is exactly what created Sheedy's try. A few phases tying in all 8 Italian forwards into 8 metres of space. A smart pick and go by Tipuric takes out Fischetti and Lamero, leaving the blindside totally bereft of big blokes. Sheedy and Canna both spot this. The baffled pack have left Canna in an impossible position. He cannot stay where he is, or Wales will work the overlap, and he cannot cover that, or Lloyd Williams dummies and scores. So he probably makes the best decision of a bad bunch, trying to pressure Williams and ruin the ball at source. However, Sheedy continues wrapping round, and quick hands by Navidi puts him over for his first try for Wales. Yet the picture is almost even worse on the Faletau try. Look at this! Look at this! It's just blokes! This is borderline undefendable, and allows Wales to just do the most simple hands down the line to let Faletau flop over in the corner. Fullback Jacob Petrula actually does a really good job to put some stress and pressure on Wales and keep them in the corner, but the guy filling his position does not. This man is Paolo Garbisi, making no effort whatsoever to cover. If Garbisi hairs it across to this corner, he can stop Faletau, but instead he looks like he's given up the ghost well before Wales have scored. This was part of what you could call a day for the elastic George Wunderkind. On initial impressions, I felt this was by far his worst game for Italy yet. Confidence shot by the opening error, leading to the first time in his full career he's gone 80 entire minutes without mugging off a single world-class player. But on close reflection, I think he was more a symptom in a greater illness at the heart of the Italian game. Ever since Matt Giteau and Johnny Wilkinson teamed up to prove money can buy you happiness, the rugby world has had a flirting obsession with the 10-12 axis, selecting 2 playmakers to try and expand your attack game. And this is something Franco Smith has embraced with Italy, starting first Tommaso Bella and then Paolo Garbisi at 10 with Carlo Canna 12. And all 3 players have played well in almost every game since, but Saturday suggested perhaps their individual performances are not the important issue. Italy had 3 decent to good attacking sets in the game, and this is perhaps the best of them, but it's also the best example of what I'm talking about. Garbisi is known for his offloads and dummies, but his biggest attribute is his ability to anticipate play phases in advance, and this is vintage work. He's pointing and calling, occasionally stepping in to give passes or attack himself, and it nets Italy 30 metres. And as they get up to the 22, he spreads it right through the backs. Not much is on, so he orders another phase into the middle so he can jog over and organise this side. Italy have worked a 5-on-6, but just as Garbisi is preparing the next step to turn this into a try-scoring chance, Carlo Canna makes a shout from the other side of the ruck. So Varney throws it to him, and he throws an absolute hospital ball to Trula, who gets knocked into touch. Italy's best passage of play killed off in one call for the ball. Whereas Garbisi is a patient fly half who likes to try and create a try-scoring chance over 10-15 phases, Canna is a far more instinctive player who would rather give a sneaky pass or a little kick. Sometimes they gel together excellently. This is what Italy are hoping for. This scrubber after after Garbisi has opened up some space is a great option, and Italy are unlucky not to force a scrum 5. But at its worst, it leads to one ten just overriding the other, instead of trusting their teammate, Canna being instinctive when they need patience, or Garbisi being patient when they need action. It wasn't so much that Italy looked better with Canna at 10 after Garbisi went off, as they looked better with just one man at 10, instead of two backseat drivers fighting over the wheel. And that's only when one of them could have used the pedals in Italy's moments in between shooting themselves in the foot. This non-cohesion continued into defence, but with the focus instead on the other midfielder, Ignacio Brex. Brex is a big, strong lad, hard worker, very solid, very decent player. But for a man who his coach says is in the team to organise their defence, he is not very good at organising their defence. He finds himself in no man's land on several of the Welsh tries, constantly buying dummy runners and getting flat-footed, but the worst of the lot is the fifth scored by George North, where he's undone by a simple loop play. Only ever watching Bigger doing his best jukebox sex train impression, and not even noticing George North is hitting an angle until it's too late. Brex is supposed to be the guy who organises the dudes around him, but Bellini is already biting into smash Bigger if the ball goes to him, meaning he doesn't need to watch him. His sole responsibility is North, his opposite number. Even just standing in the big fella's way would save this try, but instead he's so bamboozled Davis can drop it off to North, really lovely offload, and put him right off and then eventually under the posts. There were a small number of bright spots for Italy. Knowing they have another player who can create something from nothing in Ioane could help hugely once Minozzi and Campagnaro are back in, whilst Matteo Bellini was superb on his return from injury. Playing about as well as it's possible for a winger in a team as strained and battered as Italy to play. He's not just a big quick lad, his positioning in attack and defence is excellent. The support line he picks here totally opens up a hole for Federico Mori, who also played well off the bench. However, it's hard to get too excited from an Italian perspective as they fail to build on the promising first two games or even patch up the errors from their third. Every issue with this Italian team is one that's in their power to fix. The problem's no longer a player pool or ability issue, and yet after seeing how their opener against France went, they haven't even really tried to address any of these problems. I think Franco Smith's overall approach is really bold and worth persevering with, but unless they show some signs that they're at least trying to do something different, instead of having the same 3 or 4 problems again against Scotland, you're going to have to start talking about what his assistants bring to the table, because any test level defence coach who can't spot the flaws in a system so easily undone is kind of stealing a living. Whilst I hold this Six Nations is an incredibly important learning moment for a very, very young 15, and they will learn an awful lot from these 5 games, the fact they haven't improved from the first game to the fourth is very concerning. Wales, on the other hand, have undoubtedly got better game on game and entered Saturday at a place of quiet cockiness. This is a ridiculous move that only ever works in sevens, but Wales clearly tried it out once in training and decided it'd be a laugh to give it a go in a game, considering they're 30 points up. This light smearing of jam across Italian cuisine was more than enough for Pivac's side on Saturday, but they're going to need plenty more left in the jar if they're going to take on their greatest challenge yet. A French side still chasing the title away from home with the pressure of expectation on their shoulders. Grand Slam glory awaits if Wales can just put together one more 80-minute performance to prove they might just be a good team after all. Thank you for watching that. We are now coming towards the end of the Six Nations. There's still plenty more to go. I'll be moving on to, I've already moved on, I've already started on England-France. Hopefully that'll come tomorrow, day after. Yeah. I think I'll split it into 2 parts, so we'll see what happens there. Then Ireland, whoever they play, Scotland as well. Beyond that, Major League Rugby. It's starting this weekend. I wanted to get a video up for the start of that. Unfortunately, it won't be possible just because of the Six Nations. That's going to come later on. There'll be the next round. There's previews going up for Patreons. There's loads of stuff going on. Please get involved, see more, and I'll see you very soon for England-France.
Crocodile came up, bit my guts out, and bit me into pieces, and even my legs went that way, and even my head went that way.